Hello and welcome to the recorded version of the Home to School Transport Parent Information Session. This was originally delivered in the autumn term of 2020 as a live session, but we've recorded an additional presentation just so everyone can access it whenever they want to. So my name is Chloe Nkomo and I'm an advisor with Southampton SENDIASS, and I'll be taking you through this particular session today, which, as I said, is on home to school transport. Of course, with a recorded presentation, we do not have the luxury of a question and answer element, unfortunately. But if you do have any questions or feel you would like further support from a SENDIASS service, we have the contact details later on in this presentation for a service in Southampton, Portsmouth, and also the West Berks area. A little bit about SENDIASS before we get into it. Hopefully you know a little bit about our service, but if you don't worry. This slide explains who we are and what we do really well, but in my own words, we are a free impartial service available for families, children and young people with SEND, so special educational needs and disabilities. Our ethos is around empowering those we support by giving them the power of knowledge. We advise and support on areas around education, health and social care, and work closely with local organisations who may be able to assist you in other areas. So for example, in Southampton, we're part of a group of organisations or charities, and we kind of do signposting and local referrals. So if you have an issue and we don't have the expertise, we can put you in touch with someone who does. So first, when we talk about home to school transport, what are we actually talking about? What is home to school transport? So you can see the definition here taken from the Education Act, but what this means is essentially travel in both directions between home and a relevant educational establishment for an eligible child. Now you can see here I've put eligible and relevant educational establishment in bold, and I will go on to explain a little more about what this means in the next few slides. You'll also notice the note box in orange, which explains that travel arrangements must be suitable. Again, I will go on to explain the technicalities of some of this language in the next few slides. So if we start with the idea of suitability around travel arrangements, so I won't read the full list here, but there are several points made to define what is suitable. So in a word, transport must be reasonably stress-free to enable the child to arrive ready to study and engage in a school day. Said transport should of course be safe and of reasonable comfort. Overall journey time should not be unreasonably long, and you can see the specific times here at a maximum journey time of 45 minutes for primary school children and 75 minutes for secondary school age. So this time may be less for children with SEN and or disability depending on their needs, so there is some room for flexibility there. So the next quotation you'll see here is also from the Education Act, and it starts to specify the duty upon local authorities to provide transport. Again, you can see some stipulations in bold. So the Education Act says that local authorities, or LAs, are required to arrange free, suitable transport for children of compulsory school age who are eligible at their nearest suitable qualifying school. Again, we see this word suitable to describe transport, which we have now covered. We also see the terms eligible and suitable qualifying school, which I will go on to explain further. And finally, the application to children of compulsory school age, which, as you can see from the purple box, begins from the term following a child's 5th birthday and ending on the last Friday in June in the academic year they turn 16. For example, a child in reception who turns 5 in June, the summer term, is not of compulsory school age until the autumn term of the following academic year. So if that child was in reception in the 2021 academic year, they would become of compulsory school age in the autumn term of 21-22. Now on to some of those definitions. First, we have the relevant educational establishment, which is quite simply defined as a qualifying school, and there is a fuller list to follow, or a place other than a school where the child might be receiving education. For example, a pupil referral unit, which is what PRU stands for on this slide. Here is the list of what counts as a qualifying school, which I will leave you to read at your own leisure. In my experience, I have not encountered a case where a child or young person attends a setting or establishment that is not included in this list, but that is not to say it cannot happen. In the event it does, or if you're unsure, do contact your local SENDIASS service for further advice and we can support you further. Next, we'll go on to the definitions of eligibility. So there are several criteria, if you like, that contribute to eligibility, and there may be several scenarios at play for you and your child. For example, you may be eligible in one area but not in another. So first, we have children who attend schools or another setting beyond the statutory walking distance. Again, different distances for different ages. For under 8s, the distance is 2 miles, and for over 8s, it is 3 miles. So that's the statutory walking distance for both of those age groups. To apply this to a real-life situation or context, if your child who is under 8 years old is registered to attend a school that is more than 2 miles away, and the LA have not made arrangements for attendance or boarding at a nearer school, your child would be eligible for free home-to-school transport. The second criteria is children with SEN, special educational needs, disabilities or mobility problems. With this criteria, even if you live within those statutory walking distances on the previous slide, you may still be eligible for home-to-school transport if it cannot reasonably be expected for your child and you to walk to school and no other arrangements have been made for a nearer school. Now, this might apply if physically your child is unable to walk to school or walk long distances, or if walking to school is difficult due to your child's SEN, for example, sensory sensitivities or awareness of danger. Third, we have children whose route to school is unsafe. This may apply if there are not suitable paths or routes for walking. For example, if the route to school is along a busy main road without any pathways. Finally, we have children from low-income families, where a child is entitled to free school lunches or parents or carers receive working tax credit at the maximum rate. They also will be eligible for free home-to-school transport. There are some further stipulations to this point across the different age groups, which you can see in the 3 bullet points here. So far, we have talked about compulsory school-aged children. But what about those children who are under 5 or who are of non-compulsory school age? For these children, there is no requirement for the LA to provide transport. However, decisions around travel arrangements are at the LA's discretion, as given by the Education Act. The LA also has this discretionary power if transport is considered necessary in supporting the child's attendance at school. What this means in a real-life context is that if transport were an issue for you and your child under 5, though there are no requirements upon the LA to provide transport, they do have discretionary powers. It would be wise to have an open conversation with the LA and the educational setting or establishment that your child attends, just to discuss it further, and that's a conversation that SENDIASS can support you in if needs be. We've now covered under 5s and compulsory school age. But what about the post-16 world and young people between 16 and 19 years old? As with under 5s, there is no requirement for the LA to provide transport. However, there is that discretionary power given to LAs where support may be necessary to facilitate attendance. Every LA will have a local transport policy statement, which will set out their local policy for post-16. There are links to these local policies for Southampton, Portsmouth and West Berks at the end of this presentation, so do check these out if you need further information. Finally, we have young people aged 19 and over. As we know, these young people may still be in education or training in an educational setting. As with 16 to 19-year-olds, there is no requirement upon the LA to provide free transport. However, there is the expectation to make arrangements as considered necessary, for example, to facilitate attendance, as we've seen. Now, there may well be a situation where you receive a transport decision you do not agree with, and in this situation, appealing the decision via the LA's own internal procedures should be available to you as an option. This information can be found in the LA's transport policies. In a case where your child or young person has an EHC plan, transport issues can be relevant in the placement section of the plan, so section I. However, the tribunal cannot deal with transport disputes in isolation. Whilst we're talking about EHC plans, it is also worth addressing whether transport can or should be included in an EHC plan. As you can see on this slide and read further in the SEND Code of Practice, transport should be recorded only in exceptional cases where the child has particular transport needs. This includes where residential provision is named at some distance from the family home. Transport costs may be included as part of a personal budget and therefore included as part of special educational provision, and that's what SEP stands for on this slide. Finally, there may be a situation where the LA find an appropriate school near the family home, but the parents choose a setting further away. In this case, the LA can ask the parent to provide some or all of the transport funding. So just a few takeaway points from this presentation. I realise that there's a lot of information here and it can be quite confusing, but I think the main points to take away are: number one, always refer to your local authority's local policy. This is where the information you need will be. It can be found on the local authority website, the local offer, or on the references slide of this presentation. So we'll have a link to the policies for Southampton, Portsmouth and West Berks there to take you directly there. The second point is around exceptional circumstances. So in a situation where your child doesn't meet one or several of the eligibility criteria, you may be asked to complete something called an exceptional circumstance form. Now that's what it's called in Southampton. It may have a different name in other local authorities, but what this means is the local authority are just asking for the parent or carer to describe the difficulties they have in getting to school, getting back, or both. And to put into words, what those difficulties are and why does your child need home to school transport, and what are the exceptional circumstances. So for example, I personally have supported a family with an exceptional circumstance form, and because the child had quite significant sensory sensitivities around the weather, so wind, rain, and she also had eczema and skin conditions caused by wind and rain and cold weather. So because of all of those interacting things, the parent felt that walking to school, although it was within the 2 miles, walking to school was just too difficult and caused the child too much stress. So she had to fill in this form. So the third point around post-16, so it can be a tricky area to navigate in general, not just in transport, but the main thing is that all local authorities have a duty to publish a transport policy specific to post-16 young people. So do look there first, it will be there. You may want to consider other sources of transport funding as well if your young person is not eligible. So for example, if they receive social care, that may be an option for funding. So the next few slides are full of references. I won't bore you by reading through every single one. Hopefully it's quite clear what it is and which part of the legislation or guidance will be useful to you. Hopefully they will be useful if you ever want to read up more on the legislation or guidance around transport, or if you need to quote or share it with a professional to support your request, for example. So hopefully that's set out in a clear way where you can access what you need. If anything isn't clear for whatever reason, or you have any questions about the legislation or guidance, do get in touch. I will be showing you our contact information shortly. So even if you have a very quick question or want to just clarify, oh, I read this in the Education Act, can I just double check that it means XYZ? We have, trained staff on our helplines who can support you with those requests. So do get in touch. Hopefully you should be able to access the links in this presentation. If not, there should be another version uploaded elsewhere on the website. If you cannot find this and I am completely wrong, please do get in touch and we can send you a copy of the presentation or the specific links or documents that you would like. As well as those legal references or links to guidance, the links on this slide will take you to websites which are a mine of information. For IPSI, for example, is really useful just for kind of setting out processes, and it includes legal references that you can refer to quickly, and it's a really accessible way to learn about SEND law. Case law from IPSI as well, so it will give you specific examples of cases that have gone to tribunal, the outcomes of those cases. So there may well be, quite a unique case that doesn't quite fit in with the legislation or guidance in some way, and then it's gone to a tribunal, and as a result a decision has been made and case law has been enshrined, which gives kind of a different perspective to take if you are in a similar situation. The CDC, or Council for Disabled Children, is another brilliant website. Plenty of information around education, health, social care, really useful. And the Special Needs Jungle, again, is a brilliant website with lots of parental input as well, which is really nice. Quite a nice community as well. And then it's worth looking, I've just put at the bottom, diagnosis-specific charities or organisations, as they often can give you more specific advice, potentially relevant to your child and their diagnosis or diagnoses. They also, in some cases, may be able to point you in the direction of funding or grants that they can access as a charity. So it's definitely worth getting in touch with those if they exist, or at least doing a quick internet search to see what you can find. So the next few slides are area-specific resources. So I've started here with Southampton. So you've got the home to school transport policy and post-16 travel arrangements policy. You've got the eligibility criteria and mainstream school application form as well. Contact information, they're linked to the website. If you click on the lovely Southampton City Council logo, that will take you to the local offer page, which will give you more information and any contact information for the department you need. Very similar page makeup here, so we've got links to the relevant policies, a few more guidance documents here which might be helpful for the Portsmouth area, contact information, and again that local offer link there for you. And then last but not least, we have the West Berkshire page. So again, relevant links, contact information, link to the local offer page. I'm aware that perhaps you might have stumbled across the website and not be from one of these local authorities. So apologies if I haven't included your local authority's information. These are the 3 SENDIASS services that we run, so that's why it's just these 3, but you should be able to find your local information on your local offer. So whatever your local authority is, if you Google them and local offer, you should be able to find that information. And finally, as promised, here is the contact information for the 3 services that we run. So West Berkshire, Southampton and Portsmouth. So you've got the helpline number there. We've got the email address, which goes directly to a member of staff monitoring the email, and the websites below as well. We also have a Facebook page, which we're quite active on. We'll often post links to documents, resources, videos, fun little pictures, things like that. We're also active on Facebook chat, so some parents or carers prefer to make initial contact through Facebook. It's quick, it's easy, and we can do things that way if you prefer. We welcome referrals from professionals, but also from parents, carers, family members, self-referrals. So do get in touch, again, if you just have a brief query, a few questions, want to clarify something, or if you feel you need more intense support or more long-term support, do get in touch, and we'd be more than happy to help you in any way we can. And that brings us to the end of the presentation on home to school transport. I hope it was useful in some way, even if a little bit. and answered any questions you might have. Naturally, you may have further questions or want to talk about your specific case a bit more with an advisor or a member of staff. As I've said throughout, and you'll get bored of hearing me say it, do get in touch through one of the modes of communication mentioned previously, just to have a chat, if you like, an initial chat, see if we can support you. We would be more than happy to. But thank you for listening, and do take care. Bye bye.